This is a nice one that looked at the impact of green design on student behavior. So green design, identity or both? Green design, identity or both? Factors affecting environmentally responsible behaviors in student residences. Right? Can green buildings be just green but also be identity, or are they just an identity? Of the university wants to brag about green buildings, but what do students feel about them? Occupant behavior is one of the most important contributors to a building's energy and water consumption. The study investigates the influence of environmental attitude, identity, and presence of the green building features on students' environmentally responsible behavior. So the green building is designed to use light, natural light, reduce energy use natural flow to reduce heating and cooling energy use, and so on. But on top of that, you have motion sensor lights and everything, and yet the occupants have to be also very conscious about not wasting energy, water, etc. Right? Study was conducted in a university campus setting. 121 students of green and conventional student residences have completed a survey answering the questions about their behavior, beliefs, and the perception of green features in their residence. Green building features have been divided into two categories: visual and conceptual. The results of statistical analysis have shown that the main determinant of students' behavior is the level of environmental identity. Students who live in green residences declare a lower environmental identity and less pro-environmental behaviors than the students in conventional residences. Just read that again. Students who live in green residences declare lower environmental identity and less pro-environmental behaviors than students in conventional residences. In green residences, environmentally responsible behaviors are more frequent when students are aware of the presence of visual green building features. At the same time, despite declaring less pro-environmental behaviors, students in green dormitories feel they have become more pro-environmental since they moved to a green dormitory. So they think their responsibility is over by choosing a green dormitory. It's like buying a hybrid car and thinking you did your part, and then maybe you end up driving more, or you are producing more carbon footprint elsewhere, like eating hamburgers every day and so on and so forth. So human behavior is always complicated. At the same time, despite declaring less pro-environmental behaviors, students in green dormitories feel they have become more pro-environmental since they moved to a green dormitory. Implications of these findings are discussed in the context of previous studies on architectural and psychological factors affecting environmentally responsible behaviors, and in the context of moral licensing. That's a loaded word which I won't get into here, but obviously, as I mentioned, hybrid cars, when they started, there were lots of issues that were noticed. People who bought hybrid cars felt they are doing their part for the environment, so they started actually to drive a little bit more than they would if it was a fossil fuel car, because also probably it cost a little bit less to drive more. And there were aggression by other big truck drivers and so on towards hybrid cars. So human behavior can be very complicated. I'll skip all the details and jump to conclusions. Summary of research findings considering moral licensing theory. The aim of the research was to establish how student pro-environmental behaviors, identities, and beliefs are related in green and regular residences. We found that in all residences, pro-environmental identity was strong, and it was positively related to pro-environmental behaviors. Moreover, in green dormitories, noticing visual green building features but not conceptual features were associated with significantly more green behaviors. So if things are happening in the background and you don't see it, your own behavior may not be as affected as having visual symbols of that building being green, reducing energy use, light, using artificial light and heating and cooling. Moreover, in green dormitories, noticing visual green building features but not conceptual features were associated with significantly more green behaviors. I'm reading again to emphasize. Conceptual features did not influence the behaviors, however. Some of them were in the group of mostly noticeable, so insulation. Insulation is behind the wall, so you don't necessarily not able to notice it even if you want to. Surprisingly, though, living in an eco-friendly dormitory was associated with significantly decreased pro-environmental identity and less pro-environmental behaviors compared to living in regular dormitories. That has to be figured out. So if you're living in a regular dormitory, maybe you have a way of realizing that it's up to you to reduce your environmental impact from living in that dorm or the overall dormitory's environmental impact. Whereas if you're in a green building, you think the building is taking care of it, so we don't have to worry about it. Despite this, students in green dormitories reported becoming more pro-environmental since moving into the building. That's a perception and a self-assessment. Although it seems like a paradox, it can be possibly explained with moral licensing phenomena, as indicated by Sachdeva et al. Affirming moral identity, in this case living in green student residences, leads to immoral actions, lack of pro-environmental behavior. This is what moral licensing is about. So you have a moral identity with some action like living in a green dorm or buying a hybrid car, and then it can actually lead implicitly or explicitly to immoral actions like pro-environmental behaviors in this case, or driving more with a hybrid, as I said before. Okay, so that's something human behavior is often known for. Implications for future research. Green buildings usually have been found to have a positive impact on reducing energy and water usage. In line with these findings, our research provides evidence that visual green building features, when noticed, they do positively influence inhabitants' pro-environmental behaviors. Contrary to this, our research suggests that green building certification or advertising underlining green profile of the building might have an opposite effect. We have this in many instances. There is something called Jevons effect or Jevons paradox, where as you increase efficiency of something, its use actually goes up, which is the same example as the hybrid car. Further research is needed to re-examine the effect of moral licensing on pro-environmental behaviors in both academic residences and in other buildings. Examine if the observed moral licensing effect persists in academic residences, where students can select their preferred residence based on its green profile instead of being administratively assigned to them. Right? So when you go into the university and you have to pick a dorm, let's say it's a choice. You pick a green dormitory or a regular dormitory, especially if there is a cost associated with it. Would you do it? Uber Green now, for example, is very commonly available, tends to be slightly higher. I sometimes take it, but often it depends on what is quickly available, because I don't want to wait for too long. So that's not moral licensing, but that's just partial commitment to green, where I don't mind paying more, but I better get the cab quickly, right? So again, complicated behaviors. We are getting close to the end, but this is the last chapter looking at the way forward. This will probably take longer, or maybe I'll split it into 2 podcasts, because this has got some good messages with all the chapters we have looked at in part 1 and part 2, the framework and the examples and initiatives and so on. What have we learned, and what are the ways forward for campus sustainability, which is a key issue. Okay, we'll come back and conclude the book with the last couple of podcasts.